Hey YouTube, welcome to a brand new adventure in something that I'm calling, for my channel, Kosher MGTOW. I'm going to give you guys an overview of what my channel's all about, and overall what I have intentions on doing on this channel. I firmly believe that there's just something a little bit missing from the MGTOW community that I think that can be added to today's day and age that may or may not provide an outlet, a way to vent, a way to introduce topics in an eye-opening and enlightening fashion, and I'd like to do that in this sort of medium. So that way, it's sort of therapeutic, not just for myself, but potentially for others that might be Jewish, that might be single, that might be married, that might be going that red-pilled lifestyle, that MGTOW philosophy. Maybe, hopefully, this channel will be an extra little nugget that might be something that could be added to those that are already out there, those wonderful content creators. But overall, this is an overview. Welcome to the Kosher MGTOW channel. I'm not introducing myself by name, by likeness, by image yet. Some people might say that that's a little bit cold and cowardice, and that's against the grain, and that I'm somebody that's hiding behind a screen, but for the time being, I'm a voice, and I think it's a voice that may or may not be what you're accustomed to. But overall, it's a personal brain-dumping adventure. I think there's a lot of reasons for why I'm creating this channel. I think it's going to be therapeutic. It's going to be maybe somewhat selfish at first because I have ideas and interests that I want to share among those that are in the MGTOW community. Those that are Jewish or maybe not necessarily Jewish. And hopefully, maybe you can see my line of reasoning, and maybe we can just share opinions. We don't have to be contradictory. We don't have to name call or use all sorts of different foul language to address one another. I think this is just a great way to express ideas in a medium where at least we're kind of like-minded, or at least we can see each other's vantage points. But overall, just to get started, I've fallen in and out of love with religion, specifically Judaism, several times over the course of my lifetime. I'm already in my early 40s. And one thing that, you're going to see as we go through the different experiences that I've had is that it's been a very bumpy roller coaster ride of different experiences that I've had dealing with women. And I think that this could serve as a podcast so that ideas can be shared. But, straight off, there's going to be some real life experiences that I will eventually share on this channel with dating Jewish women and also dating women that are outside of Judaism, all creeds, colors, nationalities, religious backgrounds. I've had a little bit of experience that maybe I can share, and maybe I can learn from some of you as well in regards to those different things. But there are a lot of different chapters that I want to introduce when it comes to this Kosher MGTOW channel. And of course, there are traditions and there are norms. There are expectations that family have for a young Jewish person as they're growing up in society. In terms of, you get advice, you get ideas, you get knowledge from those that are around you, your environment, from teachers, from rabbis, from politicians, from leaders. And it's different across generations. What you might have learned back in the 50s is not necessarily what was taught in the 70s, which was not what was necessarily taught in the 90s, the 2010s, or even today's day and age. It's been an ever-evolving situation that, despite whatever you have studied or whatever you have learned and acquired and have accumulated and have maintained in your mind from the Torah, there's all these different new ideas that keep propping up. All of a sudden, you hear all these stories about these popes and these rabbis and all these different urban communities near big cities, and they all want funding, and they all want, to be recognized and appreciated and accepted, and they just go ahead, blanket statement, and they accept homosexuality, and they accept very, very progressive matters just so that it fits their narrative, and it can provide money for their initiatives, their politicians, their favorite leaders, for different business ventures. And there are several different categories of Judaism, and over time, I could like to reflect on those differences, those that are Reconstructionist, Reform, Conservative, those that are Orthodox. Each and every one of those categories of Judaism handles their ways and their affairs differently than others. Everything from how they do prayers, Torah studies, as far as going to synagogues, as far as who they select as their friends, their confidants, which family members they're leaning towards as far as financial support, as far as emotional support. And, I'd like to dive in and go a little bit into some dating situations. JDate, we're talking about some sites out there that are just total scams. You've got some women out here, Jewish American princesses, that are picky as can be. They want to be served hand and foot, this and that. Everything from speed dating to Jew parties. I want to really dig deep down, because if you go to a speed dating event in Chicago, it's going to be different than a speed dating event in New York. If you go to a Jew party in Las Vegas, it's going to be different than a Jew party in Miami. You're going to meet different people. You're going to meet different women. You're going to meet individuals that have different levels of Judaism in them, and also, their role in society, everything. It's just different. The way that they were raised might be different. All sorts of things. I'd like to address gender roles on this channel. Of course, everyone's familiar with the fact that, women are going to continue to push the feminism movement, and they're going to be very arrogant about it. And I think that that's something that definitely needs to be addressed on this channel as well. But going deep down into, each of the Jewish holidays, and, even kosher food, I think, it has something that needs to be discussed here as well. What was presented to you as a child as to what is fair, right, and honest about relationships, whether you learned it from cartoons, whether you learned it from your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, from Disney. All these different things, and then the levels of fairness that go along with it. Is this an actual depiction of reality, or is this just totally off-the-wall ridiculous? And then, I also want to address the different situations where you're in a relationship and then you have levels of temptation. And then there are behaviors that are sometimes rewarded by women or by men, vice versa, in relationships, and when things are going awry, when things are actually working out. You even want to go as far as to talk about arrangements that family trying to set up their sons or daughters to get with other young Jewish people at a very young age, get married, populate, don't use birth control, use birth control, depending upon how religious they are. You even want to dig deeper into the money matters. Some of these families are very, very much on a narrow spectrum, the point A to B thinking. You got to get married, you got to have kids, you got to have this account, you got to have this going for you. And if you don't, then they're going to get disowned and all this other stuff. But there are a lot of stereotypes out there, and they're honest stereotypes. We shouldn't be stereotyping, but there are honest stereotypes. There are people in society that feel as though you got some Jewish men that can think for themselves, that are hard workers, that are alpha types, and then you got those simps. You got the nice Jewish boy, that nice Jewish man, and then on the flip side, you got the women. You got the obedient, submissive Jewish women, but then you have the Jewish American princess. That's over and beyond anything that you could ever particularly ever think of if you've never experienced dating someone that is a Jewish American princess. But it is so eye-opening that you see the constant struggle that you have to try to get attention from a woman, especially considering the fact that you're competing against their father. A father that might have a PhD, and I'm not talking about a doctorate degree. I'm talking about Papa has dinero. And when you're constantly competing with a woman's father for attention, it's almost impossible to win that game long term in any way, shape, or form. And then you got to go to the other side of the situation. You got some of those Jews that do get married, they have children, and then you have the stereotype of the overbearing, over-intrusive, constantly nagging and controlling and guilt-shaming battle axe of a Jewish mother. that ultimately can make, break, frame, or destroy people mentally or psychologically. I mean, it is just absolutely unbelievable what happens to some women when they turn and become mothers. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. There are media influences that definitely have a bearing as to how people act and react in society to different situations. And some Jews experience animalistic tendencies, and I'd like to have that as a possible item of discussion as well. But overall, the social media use, the bullying, the different sorts of tactics that are being done in today's day and age online, I think needs to be mentioned as well. The overall hype of marriage, or the overhype of marriage, you know, the traditions, the ties with different genres and those that are in and out of the Jewish race altogether. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on. We're in the middle of gender wars, of course, and overall, there are Jews that live to have a specific reputation, and they inherit all sorts of things, bad habits, good habits, problems, practices, intelligence, businesses from their family. And some Jews are just trying to find their way through with life. Whether they decide to get married, don't get married, have children, don't have children, divorces, multiple spouses, rebelling against the world, those that are totally against Jews altogether, the anti-Semitism. This different stereotypes. There are a lot of people in this world that see Jews as being very materialistic and greedy in certain ways, shapes, and forms. And, I think these are all topics that need to be delved into really, really deeply and with a very fine lens. So that way I think that everyone can get a voice and also can share their beliefs and interests in this meeting. So basically, to sum up, the overview. Kosher MGTOW YouTube channel, more like a podcast at first. I don't see this as necessarily being a lot of cartoon images and a lot of video chats and stuff like that right away, but at first just a place to vent, to introduce topics, to enlighten, to get things across. Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, it could be a learning adventure. I'm sure that many of you out there that are going to be listening are men, and many of you might have had experience dealing with a Jewish man or a Jewish woman at some point in your life, and you might have a specific opinion, positive, negative, indifferent, about how Jews handle their affairs and stuff. But I also have a lot of personal things that I need to share to get off my chest, to get off my brain. It's therapeutic that way. And I would like to share some of my ideas and bounce them off of others. I don't see what the problem is by just going out there, instead of just being my own best psychologist and bounce the ideas off my head, why I can't actually bounce these same ideas off of others. I think from a very, very young age, I took the red pill and I noticed things about women that immediately turned me off to them in many ways. In terms of sex, that's another story. But in terms of just dealing with women, living with women, handling women all together, I've been turned off to it quite a bit. And I'd like to dive into that on this Kosher MGTOW. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Click like and subscribe. Please put a comment, put questions, put whatever you'd like. I'd really like to hear what everybody else has to say as well. And keep it clean, people. You don't have to get at each other's throats. If you got something to say, say it. And hopefully it's tasteful. Have a great day.